Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Lee Ritenour Licks from 1984, and I've had some requests to feature this legendary studio ace, and definitely, Lee's a very respected guitarist. He's been on the scene since around 1968, and he quickly became a first call session player. And he built his career right alongside other session legends like Larry Carlton and Dean Parks. Of course, eventually you had players like Steve Lukather and Michael Landau and Dan Huff. And these session and studio wizards are great musicians. And you can definitely learn a lot from studying their music. So if you're a Lee Ritenour fan, buckle up. Here we go. So Lee became a solo artist somewhere in the mid-70s. And, before then, he definitely racked up a lot of sessions and studio appearances, backing up very famous musicians and artists and bands. And then that continued. He definitely had lots of studio work. And it's interesting, if Larry Carlton didn't play on it and Dean Parks didn't play on it, then more than likely Lee Ritenour probably did. And I wanted to make sure to include a shout out to Lee's first solo album from 1976, First Course, which is on the wall right there, and I tracked that down. And it's a really interesting album, and Lee's other solo albums are good. But that one is just extra funky, and it has this really different kind of sound and groove, from 1976, which that explains a lot. But what a great album. Definitely, we want to kind of sample more of Lee's music. Check that out. So the licks in this lesson actually came from a live concert I found here on YouTube, and it went on for over like an hour. It might have been like an hour and a half or something like that. And there was a lot to choose from a full concert. But I just kind of cherry picked like certain ideas and certain licks that popped up that I really liked. So if you're a Lee Ritenour fan, a player looking for some different licks to kind of sprinkle in your bag of tricks, buckle up, here we go. Okay, the first lick's this unison-based pedal point idea, and it's really interesting. It was the first lick that I grabbed from the concert, like, ooh, yeah, I want to make sure I include that one. And we're in B flat for this, and it's something like this. One more time. So like I said, we're in B flat, like B flat major. And he's basically shift sliding into B flat there on the G string, and then the unison is grabbing that B flat on the B string right there. So a unison is the exact same note, right? It's not an octave, it's the exact same note and the exact same pitch too. Two B flats that are identical right there. So he's sliding into the G, and then he basically double picks that B flat on the B string right there. And then you're going to move that B flat. You can kind of hear it, like move from B flat to A to G to A. It kind of reminds me of Eric Johnson a little bit there. So it's, B flat, 2 B flats on the B string, A, 2 B flats on the B string, G, 2 B flats on the B string, A, 2 B flats on the B string. So that's the first half. Then you're going to stay on that B flat unison twice. And then that A to B flat. And then that G to B flat. Then you're going to grab the C note there on the B string, bend that up a whole step, and then catch that F on the high E. Like that. So all the way through it kind of slow. Something like that. And I just like that kind of blurry sound it has. It's also a big picking workout too. He's got that double picking going on. Cool lick right there. Okay, next up's a bluesy scale sequence that uses the blues scale, and when I saw and heard this, I was like, hey, I know that sequence. And I didn't learn this from Lee Ritenour, but I definitely recognized it when I saw him play it. And it basically starts over C major, and then it ends with A minor. And it's something like this. One more time. So think A minor pentatonic. We're also going to use the E flat there, the flat 5, from the blues scale. But we're doing this kind of stair-stepping, like gradual sequence, and I really like the way the sequence sounds. It sounds different than typical, you know, descending 3s or 6s or, you know, like 16th notes or something, because you're doing this. That's what it looks and sounds like really slow. It's interesting because it sounds like you're ascending, but you're definitely descending through the scale. So it's kind of a awkward, you know, situation for your fret hand, but it definitely has a really nice, you know, ear candy for your ears there. You could put that in another key. It definitely works, you know, all over the place there. But Lee was definitely playing an A right there. Just a cool sequence. It's got a great sound to it, and it's really musical too, the way it kind of steps through there. Okay, next up's a hammer-on workout, and this is over E minor, and when I saw it, I was like, yeah, I'm going to include this too, because I use things like this to warm up a lot, and here's, you know, Lee using this as a lick. So you could definitely use it as a lick or as a kind of a legato exercise, strength building, finger independence, all kinds of stuff, but something like this. One more time. Basically climbing up E minor or E natural minor, you know, on the D and the G string. So he's starting here with that E, F sharp, G, A, B, C right there, and you're going to do that 4 times in a row with hammer-ons like this. Now I think I was doing like half and half in there. Right, but you want to do 4 sets of that, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you're going to move up to the next position, grab that F sharp, G, and A, that B, C, and D, and do that 3 times there. 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to move up to the next position, grab this G, A, and B, C, D, and E, and do that 3 times with hammer-ons. Then the very last time right here, that A, B, and C, E, or I'm sorry, D, E, and F sharp right there, you're going to do it once. And when you climb up, you know, that A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, then you're going to end on that A. And he kind of slides that off. You know, something like that. It's a great warm-up. Definitely great because you're using all of your finger, fret hand finger combinations right there. Right there. You know, the double whole step right there. And then like a half and half right there. Deceptively, you know, difficult lick. Great for warming up your fret hand, and it also sounds cool like in music, in a song like that. Okay, here's a bonus lick from this footage, and it's a blurry legato-based idea, and it also has some chromatic notes in it. Something like this. One more time. So this is actually over D minor, believe it or not. And he's basically doing this B, C, B, and then this A, G sharp, A right there. It almost makes it sound like A harmonic minor, right? But it's noticeably over D. And he's doing that. And then right there, after you do that 3 times, so that's 3 right there, 1, 2, 3. Then he basically starts on that B note and climbs up chromatically. When you get up to that high G, then you're going to bend that G up to A. Like that. So kind of slow. One more time. And when you see the footage of Lee playing this, it's very intense, and you can see like the There's another person on stage that's almost afraid of the notes and the shred, like, oh my gosh, and you see him kind of run off. I don't know, I'm not sure what's going on there. But it's definitely kind of intimidating when you hear it, like, wow, that's cool. And that kind of blurry chromatic, shmush at the end. Cool lick, very intense, and definitely an attention getter right there. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of 3 for All with this look at 3 Lee Ritenour licks from 1984. And definitely, as much as Lee is a legendary guitarist and session musician and all these credits and amazing songs that he contributed guitar parts to, not to mention his solo work, it does seem like he's overlooked by a lot of people. He definitely has fans and followers and this kind of cult, following and respect. But to the average person on the street, they have no idea, who he is if you mention his name. But then if you start mentioning some of the music and songs that he played on, they're like, oh yeah, I didn't know who that was, but yeah, I know all that music. But to me, it's like, it's one thing to know the music. It's another thing entirely to know the musicians that put it together, especially these session, musicians that work behind the scenes. Sometimes they didn't even get credit on the albums that they played on. But it definitely seems like there's more respect and notoriety for these players in the modern age compared to, how it was back in the 70s and 80s. They were this kind of invisible, musician that existed. And in today's world, there's lots of respect for those, classic musicians that did all this work, played all those historic songs and solos and stuff. Great musician. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Nant Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.